thank you. Oh boy, you're so kind. Thank you, my fictional friends and fans. And welcome into Talking Sports at Work on this Tuesday edition. Normally, you guys know we do a Monday show, but I was off work yesterday, so we're doing Tuesday, and that just means that we get to talk about all of the football of the weekend, including Monday Night Football. I hope everyone had a great weekend. It was an insane weekend when you talk about football, especially in the college game. Excuse me. Yeah, before we dive all into that, though, let me just go ahead and turn that off now. Before we dive all into that, a couple of things I wanted to announce. We're going to be doing a new podcast coming up very soon. I've already actually got it all, well, mostly set up. And it's going to be really kind of what I was planning on doing all along. Which is a podcast for just my short stories that I wrote or that I write. And I've always kind of looked at this podcast as sort of not necessarily a practice run, but just sort of like something where I could get the feel of it, and start doing. I had never done something like this before, so I just kind of wanted to get better at it and get a sense of how it goes, and sort of get a rhythm of how I'm going to be, and just figure it out basically. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job of that now with this one, and I'm pretty proud of how it's been, even though it's not like it's we're famous or anything here. It's been good, I think. And I'm happy with the way the podcast has gone so far. But now I always wanted to do a podcast with my short stories, because that's eventually what I want to do for a living. That's why I'm almost finished with my creative writing degree, is I plan on writing fiction for a living. And, for years and years and years now, I have tried to write a novel, and it just, I always either lose interest, or for whatever reason, I don't end up finishing it. Even with this most recent one that I was super duper excited about, I sort of got caught up in other things. I mean, I've got a very, very incredibly busy life. And so it's hard to even make time for writing in general. But anyway, the point is, excuse me, that I've kind of just come to terms with the fact that it's okay to just write short stories, at least, starting out. Especially with modern media and how I could, publish these myself, how I could read them on a podcast, how maybe they could be in, like, maybe eventually get to Audible or something. I can also make a living writing short stories, which is what I'm good at, and I know I can do and complete. And maybe eventually, if I'm able to establish myself and able to actually start making some money from writing, I can finally get to where I can just dedicate time to that as my job and finally write a book. But for now, I'm okay with the short story thing. It's what I'm good at. It's what I've done a lot of. And I've already got 2 right now ready to go that I can read. And I think I'm just going to do it maybe weekly. And that will also, I'm thinking, give me incentive to write more. Because now I don't really have that outside of, even these 2 stories that I've got, I wrote them for classes that I was in. So now if I have this podcast, then I'll have more incentive to sit down and write, and I think that will only make me better and only help things. So I'm really excited about it. Excuse me, I'm kind of not sure about the title still, but as of now, the title is H.D.W. Pursley's Stories, Fables, Fictions, Lies, and Truth. That's the name that I'm going with right now. I don't know. I may change it, but it's going to be H.D.W. Pursley Stories and then something. So search that. I'll try to find a way to share a link here on this podcast, on Spotify, and on Apple if possible, and wherever else I can. I'll put it on the YouTube channel, and I'll put it on all my social media stuff once I really get it up and running, which if you don't follow me on social media, I'm at HDW Pursley on most of those things. And so yeah, I'm really excited about that, and I'm happy I'm finally going to get that going. And that was kind of part of why I was off yesterday, is I was just so far behind on everything, specifically schoolwork and everything else that I'm trying to do, because normally I work 4 10-hour days and I have Wednesday off, but that has not been the case for a while now. I've been having to work my off day for a while, and then I've got my kids all weekend, and so we're usually doing stuff all weekend. And Jack's got football, and we've got countless other things going on. So I don't usually that Wednesday is my day to do schoolwork, to do housework, to write whatever I can, to work with the podcast, to work on the YouTube channel, and I haven't had that in a while. And so I used yesterday to try to get caught up on a lot of this stuff. And so anyway, that was that's my announcement. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be HDW Pursley Stories something. Um, and then what was the other thing? Oh, I was just going to talk about Jack's football team. We lost this week, which was very disappointing. But it was against this private school team that's always just really really good. And excuse me, they've got highly paid coaches and tutors and training staff and all that shit. And I mean, for 6-year-old kids. So it was. Yeah, it was going to be a tough ask for us to beat them anyway, and so we're now I think 3-2, but our last 3 games are at home, and we should win all 3 of them. There's really no reason why we should lose to any of these teams that we have left. So hopefully we should still be able to finish the season in second place. Jack himself has just improved immensely throughout the season, and he was already just naturally, really athletic. But because he's so focused and just so determined and so always ready and willing to get better, like he's going to be so good when he gets a little older. I mean, he's right now the youngest. I think he's either the youngest or the second youngest on his team right now. And there are kids out there that are 2 years older than him, and he's still one of the best players on the team. And I just part of me can't wait till he gets a little older, and at least that gives me something to look forward to with them getting older, because I hate it. Other than that, but he's just gotten so much better, and I've had a ton of fun coaching them, and so yeah, it's really exciting. And yeah, even though we lost this weekend, that sucks. But sometimes you learn a lot from the losses. And on that note, I lost a good bit on Saturday because of the insanity that happened in college football. We will dive into that, as well as a really fun week in the NFL, after this quick break. And I don't know, I almost said after some messages, or after, I don't have any fucking sponsors. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Alrighty, hello friends, back again, and you may notice a difference in the audio. I had to charge my AirPods a little bit because I'm still having issues with that, but now we've got those in, and hopefully sounds better now. So we had a crazy week of football. We'll start off with the NFL. Even though my Titans did not play, there's still a ton to talk about there. The first game, and it was great. I like when they do these London games because it means football all day. You wake up, and I actually forgot about it until the game was already a little bit underway. And, you wake up, and, there's football starting at 9 o'clock. And then right after that, it's the 1 o'clock game, and it's all day. And especially this week, because the friggin' Sunday night game was delayed by an hour and a half, which I, of course, did not stay up to watch that whole thing. But yeah, the Jets and Vikings played in London, which I will be visiting here pretty soon myself, and I'm very excited about that. I don't know if I've announced that on here, but yeah, I'm taking a little vacation myself, and I'm super duper excited about that in early November. But anyway, the Vikings, I don't know if there's any more doubt about them. They are for real. I know that and I myself am one to say, don't buy into too much that happens in September, because the teams that look like Super Bowl contenders in September may, in December not even be in the playoffs or in the playoff hunt. But I think the Vikings have proven to be for real. And what's so cool about that is, well, I mean, one, I love Kevin O'Connell, and Brian Flores has sort of had this career renaissance now, going back to being a defensive coordinator, and just, he has been one of the stories of this NFL season so far with the excellent defense that he has created and he's calling there. And that's really cool to see. But Sam Darnold, man, I I was a fan of Sam Darnold, as were many people. I mean, the consensus was that year that he was most likely the best quarterback in that draft. And you remember that draft was looked at as possibly being the best quarterback draft since the '84 one. I think it was '84. Whenever Marino and Elway and Jim Kelly, and it might have been '81. I don't know. Whatever that year was. But that year's draft with Darnold and Baker and Allen and Josh Rosen and Lamar, that was looked at as being the an incredible quarterback draft. And until this year, it looked like really only two of those guys actually panned out. One of them obviously being Josh Allen, and then one of them who was the guy that most people didn't actually think should be a first round pick, but was taken with the very last pick of the first round by the Baltimore Ravens. Um, but now it's really cool to see this sort of career renaissance with both Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. And it makes you wonder if Josh Rosen ought to make a comeback and see what he can do now, because I mean, with these guys looking the way they have, because it's not just like they're looking finally competent. Sam Darnold is looking like he's a Pro Bowl quarterback right now. He's looking like the guy we thought he was going to be all along. And, I said for years, I've always said the Jets destroy quarterbacks. It's what they do. But I think a lot of people were still hopeful that maybe he could go somewhere else and have some success. But then he goes from one completely dysfunctional organization to another in Carolina. And then he goes to San Francisco, where he competes for the job with Brock Purdy there when they still weren't sure about Brock Purdy. And so it just felt like, okay, Sam Darnold's now going to be a backup. And that was kind of the assumption this year as well. I mean, they thought that he was just sort of going to be a bridge quarterback for J.J. McCarthy. And then McCarthy goes down, and now Sam Darnold is by far having the best year of his career. Baker Mayfield, ever since, has really found a home there in Tampa and is playing the best football of his career. And it's really great to see now. So it looks like, I think there were, let's see, there were what, five? Baker, Darnold, Allen, Rosen, and Lamar. I think there were five quarterbacks taken in the first round of that draft. And right now, it looks like four of those five may actually have finally panned out. And that's really cool to see. But then, obviously, that's not what anybody's going to talk about, because what does everybody want to talk about? It's the Jets. Not the team that's shocked everybody by being 5-0, not the resurgence of a guy that everybody had pretty much written off after thinking he was the best quarterback in the draft. But no, we want to talk about the Jets. And you know what? Let's talk about the Jets. They are they look terrible in that game. And honestly, their defense, though, that was one of their better performances this year. Their offense looked terrible, but the defense finally started to look a little bit like that Jets defense that they'd been hyped up to be, for the last 2 years. And really, they did have a great defense last year, and it seemed like they had taken a huge step back this year for some reason. But then in that game, they really did look a lot better. But the offense was horrible. I don't remember ever seeing Aaron Rodgers play that poorly in an NFL game. Now, I'm sure he has had worse games in his 18 or however many year career, but I don't remember one. That was just, and it wasn't just the interceptions, it was the missed throws. It was the him not seeming to be really engaged, him not, seeming to be on the same page with his receivers over and over. And now there were a lot of drop pass, specifically by his guy, Alan Lazard, that he dropped a few, but there were also a lot of just misses bad throws, miscommunications, bad decisions. And yeah, and who's going to get the blame for that though? Nathaniel Hackett. That's where the blame's going to go. And maybe that's why Aaron loves him so much. Maybe that's why he wanted him there. Maybe that's why he wants them to keep him there, even though everybody said they should have fired him last year. Because he knows that he can be the scapegoat, if nothing else. When things are going well, Aaron's going to get the credit. When things are going poorly, Nathaniel's going to get the blame. That just seems to be the way it goes. Now, here's one thing. I've said all along, everybody is way too high on the Jets. There is one thing now, but there is one possibility that is a very real possibility that could actually make them a true possible contender, and that's Devontae Adams. And I think there's no reason for them to wait on this. There's no reason for them to overthink this. Um, it's probably going to take a third round pick. The Raiders are saying that they want a second, and so usually when you hear that, when you hear what a team is asking for publicly, they usually don't get that. It's usually like one round below that is what they end up getting. Um, so maybe the Jets can get him for a third round pick, but even if it takes a second, they should do it. I mean, this team right now, for better or worse, whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision, has gone all in on this Aaron Rodgers experiment. They handed the keys to the franchise to him the day he walked in the door. He has handpicked the roster. He has handpicked his offensive coordinator. He has made all the major decisions. Give him the guy he wants. And we know how big he is on chemistry and having his guys and having guys who know where they should be for him. You know, having his receivers run, that's why he wanted Lazard. That's why he wanted Randall Cobb. It's not because those guys are talented. They're not. They're not good receivers, either of them, but they know Aaron Rodgers. So now, why not give him a really good receiver who I know Devontae's 32, but he's still a top 10 receiver in this league. And for years, that was the best quarterback wide receiver duo in football. And now they are both still playing at a high level, probably at the very tail end of their prime. But if you're planning on going all in, which you clearly are, if you're planning on going all in, trying to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, then there is absolutely no reason why you should not go get Devontae Adams and just pay what it costs. Even if it costs a second round pick, just do it. Because right now, you are not a Super Bowl contender. Right now, you're a fringe playoff team. You might not even make the playoffs. But I genuinely believe that Devontae Adams is enough to put them over the top to where they are definitely a playoff team, where they might be the best team, and where they will at least be even, I think, with Buffalo as the best team in that division, and where maybe if everybody can stay healthy and the defense starts playing better, they can be an actual contender. I have been a very vocal critic of the Jets all along, but I do think Devontae Adams, given his talent, given their needs, and given his history and chemistry with a quarterback who's all about history and chemistry, I think he really does make that much of a difference. I think if you put Devontae Adams, a healthy Devontae Adams, on that team, that could be exactly what they need to finally be in that tier of one of the best teams in the AFC. Now, does it make them better than the Chiefs? Does it make them better than the Ravens? Probably not. No. But at least it puts them closer. And they've already said, they've already done everything for Aaron Rodgers and given him everything and been very clear that this is what they are all about. They are the New York Rodgerses. So why would you draw the line here? Go ahead, get this guy who's going to make your team better, definitively going to make your team better this year. And maybe enough. I mean, just think about, even without the chemistry and the history element, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Breece Hall, that Allen, the other running back they've got, that is an elite group of skill position players with one of the best quarterbacks of all time, still playing at a relatively high level. and what should be a really good defense. I mean, that's a team that I could see actually making a little run in the playoffs. So go for it, right? Um, if they do not, I really, really hope the Bills do. I mean, honestly, I would. I think it makes makes a ton of sense for Buffalo anyway, because that's clearly what they're lacking. And how great would it be to if Buffalo, their biggest division rival right now, swooped in and took him out from under them? I mean, that would just be hilarious. And you put Devontae Adams on that team. Okay, now Buffalo is definitively a better team, and I think one of those elite teams in the AFC, because we saw Khalil Shakir, who is not a clear number one receiver. He's not a Pro Bowl caliber guy, but he's good. He without him on the field, they just couldn't do anything in the passing game. That's the difference. That's where they are right now. They don't have Stephon Diggs. They don't have Gabe Davis, and without even Khalil Shakir, who's he supposed to throw it to? I mean, these tight ends were supposed to be, we all imagined it kind of being back like the Hernandez and Gronk Patriots duo. It has not been. I have Dalton Kincaid in fantasy. He's been useless. I so that and when you don't have anybody else in your passing game except these two tight ends, I think it's probably pretty easy for defenses to cover them. You've got to have at least one player on the outside that threatens defenses, and right now, without even Khalil Shakir, they just do not have it. But if you put Devontae Adams there, okay, now that's a different story. Um, I am going to pause for one brief moment because I've got some traffic coming up I need to deal with, and I'll be right. All righty, friends. Thanks for your patience there, even though it probably was only a second on your end. But anywho, so that pretty much was what I wanted to talk about there. So going from one team that is I hate having to listen about because they're so overcovered to the team that is so overcovered. Even more so than the Jets, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. And the reason that I want to talk about the Cowboys is because first of all, I won on them. I had them on the money line. I was a little bit surprised that they were a 2.5 point underdog. I understood it. At Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh has looked good. Pittsburgh is always going to be a winning team. Um, but I did take Dallas there. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I was watching Get Up, I believe, yesterday morning, and there was some disagreement about how this should be viewed. Damian Woody was saying that this should be viewed as a good win for the Cowboys, but then I think it was Dan Orlovsky was saying no, was not a good win for them. They had all those turnovers, and they should have with the stats and how much they led, in all statistical categories, they should have run away with the game, but they didn't. And I am very much of the opinion though that this was a very, very good win for the Cowboys and should be very encouraging. And I'll tell you exactly why. Not even the stats, not even anything. This is the kind of game that the Cowboys lose. And more than that, this is exactly the kind of game that the Steelers win. So they just went in and beat the Steelers in essentially their kind of game. A low scoring game where you've got to grind it out, where you've got to run the ball, you've got to play good defense, you've got to play good situationally, you've got to, manage things. This is just the kind of game that the Cowboys seem to lose. And it's exactly the kind of game the Steelers, who are currently like the 2019 Titans, it's the kind of game that they win. And they did it. They beat them almost sort of at their own game in their own building. I think that's got to be very encouraging for the Cowboys. Um, and I mean, if you would have told me that the score is going to be 20-17, and then I would have said, yeah, the Steelers probably win that game. But the Cowboys stayed. They were resilient. They ran the ball better than they have all season. Rico Dowdle finally looked like the guy I think they were hoping he was going to be. They stuck to the running game. It was effective. It was efficient. Dak turned the ball over twice in the red zone. And that's obviously, you should be looked at as a bad thing in and of itself. but he turned the ball over twice in the red zone. They also had a blocked field goal. So that's, anywhere from 9 to 17 points off the board right there. But they still stuck with it. And at the very end of the game, they had a tremendous drive, drove right down the field. And on fourth down in the final seconds of the game, Dak did exactly what he needed to do and scored the touchdown. And right before that, he saved the day by diving on that fumble. So, I mean, and it was that those situations exactly as well are the kind of situations you don't want to be in against Pittsburgh in a close game, with their defense on the field and you needing one or two plays to try to win it. That's what Pittsburgh wants to put you in. And the Cowboys still came out with the win. So I was very impressed with that. And plus, that was one of the few bets that I actually won. And there was also one on I think it was BetMGM or somewhere that had a boosted bet that was plus 200 for either the Cowboys or the Steelers to win by 1 to 6 points, and I put a good little chunk on that. So the Cowboys winning straight up on the money line with them being a slight underdog, and that were are two of the bets that kind of saved the day because I lost all. I think I lost all my bets on Saturday. But anyway, it was a good win for the Cowboys. And on the Steelers, just really quickly, I'm hearing now that they are considering or maybe even planning on going to Russell Wilson. That's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what they think is going to happen if they do that, but Justin Fields is not the problem with your team. I mean, your receivers looked terrible. I mean, George Pickens, who's supposed to be your number one receiver, was useless in that game. And you don't have Deontay Johnson. You don't have anybody but him. So if he's not playing well, who's your quarterback supposed to throw it to? Freiermuth, who's a good tight end, but he's not an elite pass catcher. Najee Harris, who's, a good running back and a decent pass catching back, but that's still not really his forte. I mean, who's your weapon? Who are your weapons? Who's Russell Wilson going to throw the ball to if you put him in? I mean, if anything, I think you're just taking away one very important aspect of your offense, which is Justin Fields' legs. Now, and George Pickens, by the way, just briefly on him, they mentioned something about this on the broadcast too, about how, he's just got so much potential. But that's been the thing about him for his entire life, going back to college. He was a big time recruit. Everybody was waiting for him to be a great, the next AJ Green or whatever at Georgia. And he just never did. And the Steelers drafted him in the second round, I think, because he has so much pure talent, so much potential. And when he tries, when he's actually there, you can see it. But it's just, he's never that guy consistently. So I don't know what they think will happen if they go to Russell Wilson, but that would be a mistake. That team just right now, like I said, it reminds me of the good version of the Mike Vrabel Titans. Whenever they just had to grind out wins, they were going to run the ball, they were going to be great situationally, and they were not going to make too many mistakes. They were going to make an opponent beat them, and they were going to make it hard on an opponent to beat them. That's what the Steelers are, and I don't see any way of them changing that right now. Justin Fields has the higher ceiling, even still. He has gotten better. He's looked really the best of his NFL career, I think, over these first few games, but he just doesn't have anybody to throw to, and that offensive line is bad as well. So I don't know what they hope is going to happen if they go to Russell Wilson, but I, I'm surprised at it, that Mike Tomlin, who is, widely considered, and I also believe him to be one of the best coaches in all of football, I would be very surprised to see him make that decision. And if he does, then there's just got to be more to it than what we know. Anyway, I'm going to take another quick break. Got a couple other NFL topics to dive into, and then I was hoping to get some college football stuff before I run out. Alrighty, friends, back again. So, speaking of potential quarterback benchings, Deshaun Watson. I just, I don't know what to make of him, man. But I think it's become obvious at this point that he's just not going to get back to being the guy, and he's not even going to be a quality starter. Um, but when it comes to benching, here's the thing, and here's because that's been a big topic over the last for a while now. Should they bench him? Um, they would go to Jameis Winston. We know what Jameis is. We know what isn't. We know that Jameis could probably win some games with that team, with that the weapons on that team and a really good defense. But I think the reason why the Browns are hesitant to bench Watson, it's not just so much all the money and whatever. I think they know that once they do that, that's it. It is officially over. There is no coming back from that because everybody knows that Deshaun Watson has the potential to be one of the best players, not just best quarterbacks, but best players in all of football. He was an MVP level player when he was in Houston. We know that's in him. Everybody knows that he has that in him. He can be that guy. He can be not only a franchise quarterback, but an MVP level player. But everybody also knows that he has not been that guy ever since coming to Cleveland, and everybody knows that at least appears to be because he has totally lost his confidence, which is understandable given all the shit that's been going on with him. I almost said given all the shit that he's been put through, but no, I mean, he brought this stuff on himself. But given everything that's gone on in his life with all the sexual assault stuff, yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's easy to understand how a dude can lose his confidence after that. But I think they know that. I mean, if you have a quarterback who's struggling with his confidence, the absolute worst thing you could do if you have any hope of saving that quarterback is to bench him because that's the ultimate confidence destroyer for a quarterback, which is why it was also so surprising that the Panthers did that so early with Bryce Young. You basically just destroyed any shred of confidence that your young quarterback had left. Um, and so, with the quarterback who's already struggling with his confidence, I think they know that if and when they finally do that, that's it. That will be the official final death nail for the Deshaun Watson era, the experiment in Cleveland. And I think they're still holding out just a sliver of hope that they can still do something, that something can happen, something will change, something they can figure out something, he can figure out something to just unlock that superstar that is in him and just get him back on track. They are still holding out a sliver of hope, and it's hard to blame them for that. And if there is still even the slightest sliver of hope left, it will be gone if they bench him. And I think that's pretty much the thinking there. It's not so much about having a 100 million owed to a guy sitting on your bench, or I think it's really just that they know if we do that, that's officially it. There's no more hope. And I think they've still got at least a tiny bit of hope that he can get back to that level. Let's see, what else did I have on my notes? Oh, yeah, the Chiefs and the Saints played last night. I did not stay up and watch that whole game, but I did lose a bet on it. And this is another example of how I just cannot seem to share my bets with other people. Because the one that I did win on that game was I had the first touchdown scorer, and I put $25 on it, and it was plus 800 for, I think it was plus 800. It was plus something for Kareem Hunt. So I won, $225 off a $25 bet on that one. But the one, and I shared that with one of my friends, and he, won on that one as well. But the one that I shared with other people that I was actually really confident in this one was the Chiefs winning and Patrick Mahomes to throw 2 touchdowns. And of course, he didn't even throw one. He had one that was called back because of a holding penalty in the first half. He had another that he put right on Juju's hands in the end zone in the second quarter, I believe, and Juju didn't catch it. It popped up and was intercepted. And then I think he had another one later in the game that ended up. But anyway, he should have had that, but he didn't. And so I ended up losing that bet. And but so I really only ended up winning, I think, this weekend. Well, I also had a parlay that was the Colts plus 3.5, the Bills plus 3, and then under in the Patriots and Dolphins game. And I ended up just winning a portion of that because I had Buffalo plus 3 and it was a push. So I only ended up winning a portion of what that would have been. It would have been like $100 more if they would have just, if I would have said 3.5 instead of 3 or whatever. But anyway, I won that, and then I won those Cowboys bets, and then the first touchdown score. But I think that was all that I won this weekend. So it was really just enough to get me, just above breaking even, I think. But I'm sure I ended up a little bit positive. Anyway, but the Chiefs just continue to win no matter what. I mean, man, can you imagine if the Raiders would be willing to trade Devontae to them? But obviously, that's not going to happen. I think the Chiefs should be on the phone trying to get Amari Cooper right now. I think adding him to that team would really make them put them in prime position to three-peat because right now, without Rashee Rice, it, they keep finding ways to win, and they will continue to keep finding ways to win. But if you put them right now up against Baltimore and just look at who would you say is favored, who would you think is going to win that game? I mean, Baltimore should win that game. Um, and right now, I think the three, or at least three of the four best teams in football are in the AFC. The NFC is just a mess outside of the Vikings, who I do think are for real. I don't know, I think it's still going to take a little time to know if they're really a Super Bowl contender, but they are a legit, really good team right now. But if you look at, I mean, I think clearly the top three legit contenders in my mind, Super Bowl contenders right now, appear to be the Chiefs, the Ravens, and I hate to say it, but the Texans. Um, the rest of the NFC is just a mess. The 49ers have, they've been ravaged by injuries and they've really struggled with it. The Eagles they just continue to be inconsistent. The Lions are still a good team. And maybe they aren't getting enough credit, but I think did they lose it? No, they were off this weekend. But anyway, the Chiefs just are going to continue to win games because that's what they do. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Andy Reid. They have an elite defense and an elite defensive coordinator. They're going to find ways to win games, and I think that's one of the most impressive things about them. And I think if there was still any doubt, I think this game probably proved that the Saints were not for real. They looked great for the first two games of the season, and now I think we kind of see that maybe that was just a little bit of a flash in the pan or a fluke, and yeah, this is who the Saints probably really are. And Devontae is not going to make that much of a difference for them. He would make them better, but I don't think he makes them a legit contender. He might make them a wild card team, but I just don't think the Saints are nearly as close as, say, the Jets. And so, I know that he said those are the two teams that he would like to go to, but I wonder if his opinion has kind of changed ever since, especially since last night's game and seeing that the Saints have now lost three in a row. I know that the Jets have the exact same record, but it just feels like the Jets have more potential. Even though they are in the stronger conference, they are in the AFC, just feels like they are a better team. And so, anyway, that I think pretty much covered most of what I wanted to talk about with the NFL. So I'm going to take a quick break, see if I can pull over for a minute, and we'll talk about some college stuff, and then we'll go. Okie dokie, friends, welcome back. So one last NFL thing I wanted to touch on that's just worth saying before we go into the college stuff. How about Joe Flacco, man? I don't know what it is, but this dude is playing outside of that Super Bowl year where he really just looked like one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's playing the best football of his career over the last season and into this season. When he took over for Deshaun Watson, I mean, he was guaranteed. I was winning bets because it was guaranteed Joe Flacco's going to throw for at least 300 yards every game. It was nuts. And now he's really just continued to look really good now with the Colts. And you got to think that the Browns are maybe kind of kicking themselves for letting him go, given their current quarterback struggle. Um, but, Anthony Richardson, I think, is not a major injury, so may be able to come back next season. So you got to wonder, would teams start calling for Joe Flacco? And I wonder if it's maybe just the lack of pressure that has just caused him, because now he doesn't have to worry about all the expectations of, the extreme pressure that came with that great defensive team and that championship caliber team in Baltimore. And if they lose, he's going to be the reason they lose. And, all the expectations that came with that. And maybe he's just playing freer than ever now. And because of that, he's playing some of the best football of his life. But it's really cool to see that with Joe Flacco. Anyway, going into college football this Saturday, it was insane. 7 of the top 25 teams lost this week, several of them to unranked opponents. Let's see, there were 4 losses at least in the top 10. Alabama, us, Missouri, and Michigan all lost. And all of those except Missouri lost to unranked teams. Missouri lost to then 25th ranked Texas A&M. It was a wild weekend. And yeah, I mean, I guess the one silver lining for Vols fans there is because Alabama lost to Vandy. We were not the headline of this weekend, and so we didn't have to be crushed by everybody for losing to what I've said is an underrated Arkansas team all season on the road. The number 1 Alabama lost to Vandy, and go Vandy, man. Good for them. They have looked so good this year. They have looked like a legitimate Power 5, Power 4 team this year. Now, they're still not a contender, obviously, in the SEC, but they have looked like a legit team. And, NIL and transfers maybe have something to do with it, but for whatever reason, good for Vandy. Like they deserve that win, I think. It was the first time in program history not only to beat the number 1 team, but to even beat a top 5 opponent. For the first time in Vanderbilt program history, they take down the Crimson Tide. And man, that's just got to bring up all kinds of questions now about who is Alabama. And I was listening to Colin Coward, who I really enjoy, and he was saying something along the lines of like, and he actually had picked us to win the national championship a couple of weeks ago. But he said after seeing the way that it had gone, Missouri falling, Alabama falling, and all these upsets happening, he said he knew right away Tennessee's going to lose to Arkansas because it's just one of those weekends. We do have these kinds of insane weekends every year, it feels like. Maybe not to this extreme, but every year in college football, it feels like there's just that one weekend when everything gets turned on its head. And a bunch of top 10 teams lose, a bunch of top 25 teams lose. There are just a ton of upsets, and everything just goes crazy. And I honestly, like, all year I was worried about this Arkansas game. And I was talking to my cousin about this because he was feeling the same way. Like I said before the season started, I think we will win 2 of 3 against Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia. I think we'll win 2 of those, but I also think we will lose a game that we're supposed to win. And this at Arkansas game just stuck out to me all along. But the reason I was still confident was because we had the bye week. And so it felt like we've got 2 weeks to prepare for this. So there's no way it can be a trap game. We should be going in there ready with a good plan, prepared and ready to go. But still, it just ended up we were not. And I got to say, I love Josh Heupel. Listeners, friends, family, everybody knows I love Josh Heupel. That was, I think, the worst coaching performance that he's had since being at Tennessee, specifically with clock management there at the end. I don't know what was going on there, but we could have run the clock out twice, it feels like, in that game before we lost the lead. We got the ball there with like 6 minutes and something, just under 7 minutes or at 7 minutes. We got the ball back. felt like we could have been grinding it out and running the ball and at least running the clock way down at that point. We didn't. We just continued to run the fast-paced offense, which I would have understood that normally because it's what we do and because you've got this freshman quarterback on the road. And so you think, you don't want to take him out of his rhythm. You just want to keep doing what you do well and keep being aggressive. But we know we don't have to do that because we didn't do it at Oklahoma. We ground that. We did exactly what we needed to do in this one when we played Oklahoma on the road. We were not still in the turbo offense. We were running the ball. We were playing possession. We were grinding it out. So we know that we can do that. So I don't know why we didn't when it clearly called for it late in this game. I mean, we still had the lead all the way down to, a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter. We got the ball, like I said, around 7 minutes where we could have just been grinding out clock, and we didn't. We barely used any clock on that possession. Then we got the ball back again, still having the lead. With maybe I don't remember how much time was, but maybe 4 minutes, I don't know, where we still could have run the ball, run out the clock, and used up some clock. We didn't do it that possession either. Incomplete passes, going too fast, and we still leave too much time on the clock. And then there at the very end, I don't know what the hell that was, but you've got 2 timeouts in your pocket, and you let the clock, and you get the ball with, I think it was like a minute and a half or just under a minute and a half left, and you run out the entire clock, getting all the way down to the red zone. I mean, that one there, he should have called timeout there when there were 35 seconds left and we were down in the red zone. Instead, let 17 seconds or 18 seconds, I can't remember, run off the clock and basically puts us in a position where we've only now got a couple of plays left. And we still had 2 timeouts. But then we have to burn those, one on a stupid thing where, it was just trying to make sure everything's right. And then the other one, they're on that 4th down where it essentially guaranteed that this is the last play of the game. If you don't use that timeout there, then you can still get the 1st down, call your timeout, and still have time to run another play. But because you use that timeout trying to get everything right or whatever it was, whatever there was a communication problem, whatever, now that guarantees that's the last play. I mean, so many issues with the way that game was managed in the fourth quarter. I've never seen a Josh Heupel coach team be that poorly managed. It was very, very surprising. And, again, I would say, okay, it's understandable that we still need to continue running our same style of offense because we don't want to get out of rhythm. We still want to continue to be effective. But we know that we don't have to do that because we didn't do it against Oklahoma. We ran the ball. We slowed things down when we needed to. We know we can do that. So why didn't we do it against Arkansas? I don't understand that. So I don't know. But, look, and Brandon, my cousin, actually said this to me as well. Look, if this was the one really bad coaching performance that we've seen from a guy in now, about 4 years, that's okay. We'll take that. Especially given what we've gone through for a decade prior to him, it's forgivable for him to have this one bad performance. And I mean, look, I really do believe that this loss kind of falls squarely on his shoulders just because of the way that game was managed there at the end. We still should have won that game, even though it was close, even though, I mean, they've got a backup quarterback in, and we've still got the lead, and that one, yeah, that one hurt. But that now means that, still my preseason prediction has to come true. And I hope, I mean, it now means that we have to beat either Alabama at home or Georgia on the road. Both teams are obviously vulnerable. Neither team is Georgia's not as perfect as we thought going into the season, although they've started to look good again since that second half of the Alabama game. But both teams are vulnerable. Alabama is obviously beatable. And I still think that's the most likely game. And in fact, I was confident that we were going to win that game up until they beat Georgia, when I started losing a little bit of that confidence. And now losing at Arkansas honestly doesn't do that much for my confidence about that, because we've got. All right, hey friends, sorry about the interruption there. Had a little technical difficulty, but just to finish that thought, I still think now, seeing Alabama lose to Vanderbilt, even though we lost to Arkansas, I still think that we can and I believe will win that game. I hope that we're a little bit of an underdog in it, because that will allow me to give me some confidence in placing bets on it. But we obviously can't get, as fans, it's okay for us to do this, but I hope to God that the team is not thinking about this and not looking forward, because if they overlook Florida in the way that they appear to have overlooked Arkansas, we're going to be in trouble. Even though Florida sucks this year, it's still Florida. They still have our number. We still have problems with them. But I do think that for the Vols this year, and a freshman quarterback, even despite the great performance on the road, the big win on the road against Oklahoma, I do think there's a massive difference for us at home versus on the road. And so I still do believe that we're going to beat Florida next week at home, and I think we will beat Alabama at home the following week. And I still think, Nico, even with as great as he is, he's still a freshman, and it's hard for anybody to play on the road in the SEC. And so I just think that even though it worked out for us in the Oklahoma game, there's just a big difference in this team at home versus on the road. So, but, as long as we do that, as long as we win these next two games at home and then don't have any more unexpected screw-ups, we should still get a home playoff game this year, and that will be awesome. Not to mention the fact that the SEC is currently wide open right now. In fact, I think Texas A&M is technically in first place because they haven't lost a conference game yet. But the SEC is really wide open right now. Everybody, I think, except Texas A&M has at least one conference loss. I know we do, Alabama now does, Georgia does, Ole Miss does, Missouri does. So, it's really wide open right now. So we still have a chance to even make and potentially win the SEC. But I think, as long as we can just hang on and win all but one of our games, we're in good position, because I think the goal all along this year was to make the new 12-team playoff. I don't think the goal was to win the SEC or even win the national championship. I think the goal was, let's just continue to get better. Let's make sure we are one of the, those top 12 teams and make this new 12-team playoff, and then we can continue to grow and improve and get better from there. I think that's been the goal all along. And plus, not to mention the fact that, with this defense and this quarterback and these skill position players, we could make some noise in the playoffs once we get to it. So, but I think the goal has been all along, let's get in the playoffs, and then hopefully something can happen from there. And I still think that goal is very much in sight, obviously, just having the one loss. But it now means, the margin for error that we had prior to Saturday has now been very, very greatly reduced. Because now we have to win almost all the rest of our games. If we lose any more than one more game, then that's it for our playoff hopes. We have to win either Alabama or Georgia, and then win all the rest of the games. And I think that I really do think that that's very much, not only possible, but I think we will. But we've got some things to figure out, goodness knows, and I hope that the rest of the team, the coaching staff, and the players are not thinking about this. I hope right now all they are thinking about is Florida. And if that's the case, and if they can get back on track, then I will feel good. Hopefully we will blow out Florida at home Saturday and get everything back on track. And again, the SEC right now is... Oh, wait, no, I forgot about Texas. That's weird. It's still weird that Texas is in the SEC. So, yes, Texas and Texas A&M are now, I think, the only two SEC schools without a conference loss. And, Texas has a very good chance because they have a relatively easy conference schedule, if there is such a thing. With Georgia, I think, being really their only top opponent in the conference this year. And that game's going to be coming up. I don't actually know when, but that's going to be a good one. Anyway, that's pretty much all. That's all my time for today. I hope everyone had a tremendous weekend. I hope you have a tremendous Tuesday. Again, I'll say keep your eye out, and I'll keep you updated for HDW Pursley Stories and when I can get that really up and running, and hopefully things can go well with it. Again, tell your friends about this podcast, share the link, send the link, post the link, tell everybody about it. Let's keep this growing. Hopefully, I'm going to continue to try to find time to somehow do stuff with the YouTube channel if possible as well. But I hope you guys have a tremendous week. I'll probably be back again soon before the week's over, and I'll talk to you again then. Alrighty, love you, bye.